Cassandra Jones worked inside a courthouse 5 days a week. She helped other people's paperwork move through the system. Petitions, filings, orders, documents asking the law to intervene when something had gone wrong. But in May of 2022, Cassandra wasn't sitting behind that desk as a court employee. She was there as a woman asking the system to protect her. She filed 25 pages, describing what she said had been happening to her. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse. She was not asking for revenge. She was asking for one thing: for BJ Brown to leave her alone. Less than 2 months later, Cassandra Jones was dead, and the man accused of killing her would eventually leave Louisiana, shoot a Tennessee police officer, survive a massive manhunt, go to prison for that shooting, and die before ever standing trial for Cassandra's murder. So the question is not simply what happened to Cassandra. The question is, how did a woman who worked in a courthouse, who had already asked for protection, end up being murdered outside her own home? Before we uncover the rest of Cassandra's story, subscribe to Black Girl Lost and turn on notifications. Because here, we do more than tell you how someone died. We remember who they were, what they endured, and the questions their stories leave behind. Now, let's go back to Cassandra. Before Cassandra Jones became a murder victim, she was simply Cassandra. She grew up in Vicksburg, Mississippi. She ran track. She was a cheerleader. She eventually attended Hines Community College. Then she moved to New Orleans, and there she built a life. She worked. She raised her family. She became a mother of 3 daughters. She became a grandmother. And eventually, she found work at First City Court. That detail matters, because Cassandra spent her working life around the justice system. She understood paperwork. She understood courtrooms. She understood what it meant to put something on record. And when her own life became dangerous, she did exactly that. She put it on paper. But before we get to those 25 pages, we need to understand the man at the center of them. BJ Brown. Brown was not entering Cassandra's life without history. According to records and reporting surrounding the case, he had a substantial criminal history, including arrests involving allegations of violence and other offenses. There were previous encounters with law enforcement. There were previous legal problems, and there were previous warning signs. But criminal histories do not always look frightening to the person standing closest to them. Sometimes they arrive disguised as apologies, sometimes as promises, sometimes as another chance, sometimes as the belief that the person you love can still become the person you hoped they would be. And that is why domestic violence cases are rarely as simple as outsiders want them to be. Leaving is not always one decision. It can be dozens of decisions. Leave, return, forgive, try again, get scared, ask for help, try to leave again. And eventually, Cassandra reached a point where she went to court. In May 2022, Cassandra filed for a temporary restraining order against Brown. The document was extensive, 25 pages, and according to the allegations in that filing, Cassandra described a relationship that had become increasingly dangerous. She alleged physical violence. She alleged sexual abuse. She alleged financial abuse. She described being punched and kicked. She described being choked and shoved. She described threats and intimidation. One incident allegedly occurred in the early morning hours. Cassandra said Brown came to her home. She told him to leave. According to her account, the situation escalated. She alleged that he struck her with a belt. She described being punched and knocked down. She also alleged that Brown had attempted to smother her with a pillow during another incident. These were not casual accusations. They were allegations Cassandra put into a court filing. And at the end of that filing, what she wanted was surprisingly simple. She wanted Brown to leave her alone. She wanted her car back. She wanted the relationship to end. That's it. No revenge. No spectacle. Just distance. But the temporary order did not become the permanent protection Cassandra needed. She did not appear at the later hearing to pursue it. And nobody can honestly say with certainty what would have happened if she had. Maybe the outcome would have been different. Maybe it wouldn't. We cannot rewrite history, but we do know what happened next. Cassandra got less than 2 months. Monday morning, June 27th, 2022. Cassandra was leaving her apartment in New Orleans. She was preparing to go to work. The morning looked ordinary, and then Brown appeared. According to investigators, he was armed. Cassandra was shot. She ran. She collapsed in the parking lot. And somewhere nearby, a cell phone camera was recording. That footage would later become one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence connected to the case. It captured the violence. It captured Brown approaching Cassandra again. It captured additional gunfire. We are not going to show that footage here, because Cassandra's final moments do not need to become entertainment. She deserves more than that. What matters is that the shooting happened in broad daylight, near where she lived. And within moments, the life of a mother, grandmother, and court employee had been reduced to a crime scene. Cassandra was taken to University Medical Center. She died from her injuries. She was 48 years old, and 3 daughters had just lost their mother. Brown was gone. He fled Louisiana, but he did not disappear for long. That same night, hundreds of miles away in Tennessee, a police officer stopped a vehicle. Brown was allegedly inside. The traffic stop became a gunfight. According to authorities, Brown shot the officer. Then he ran. Now an entire Tennessee community was searching for him. Officers poured into the area. Dogs were deployed. Helicopters searched from above. Teams moved through wooded terrain. Homes were checked. Residents were warned. Dozens of officers joined the search. The man accused of killing Cassandra Jones had become the subject of a massive manhunt. But notice what had happened. Cassandra's murder had taken place in New Orleans. Now the story had moved to Tennessee. Another victim, another shooting, another emergency, another police operation. And Cassandra's daughters were still waiting for justice for their mother. The search lasted 2 days. Authorities eventually found Brown hiding in a shed behind a residence. He was arrested, and when officers took him into custody, they used the handcuffs belonging to the Tennessee officer he had allegedly shot. It was an extraordinary end to a violent escape. But Cassandra's daughters still had one question. When would he face the charge that mattered most to them? When would he answer for Cassandra? The answer would take years. Brown's Tennessee case moved forward. He was prosecuted for the shooting of the Tennessee police officer. In January 2024, the officer testified against him. Brown was convicted, and in March he was sentenced to life without parole, along with additional time for weapons-related charges. For the Tennessee case, there was finally a courtroom, a jury, a conviction, a sentence. But Cassandra's case was different. Louisiana still wanted Brown for her murder. The warrant remained. The evidence remained. The cell phone footage remained. The restraining order filing remained. But Brown was already in Tennessee, and the legal process between the 2 states meant Louisiana's case could not simply move forward as though nothing had happened. For Cassandra's daughters, that distinction was difficult to accept, because their mother was still dead, and the man accused of killing her was still alive, still in prison, still waiting, and then something happened that nobody could undo. B.J. Brown died in a Tennessee prison. He had never stood trial for Cassandra Jones' murder. There would be no Louisiana jury, no Louisiana verdict, no moment in a New Orleans courtroom where Cassandra's daughters could sit and hear the case against the man accused of killing their mother. The case had never reached that point. Brown was gone, and whatever answers Cassandra's family hoped to hear in court were gone with him. That is the kind of ending that does not feel like an ending, because technically a man had been convicted. He had received life without parole, but not for Cassandra, not for the murder that had taken a mother from 3 daughters. This is where Cassandra's story stops being about a suspect and becomes about the people left behind. 3 daughters, Akilah, Jalen, Jania, 3 women who lost their mother. They traveled to New Orleans after learning she had been shot. They expected to see her. Instead, they learned she had died during surgery, and then they were confronted with the cell phone footage. Their mother's final moments, a moment the rest of the world could scroll past, but they could never scroll past it. One daughter described nightmares. Another struggled with being alone because the images replayed in her mind. Think about that. The internet saw a video. They saw their mother, and then they had to live with what they had seen. For strangers, the footage was a story. For Cassandra's daughters, it was a memory. And then there was another painful reality. On the same night Brown allegedly killed Cassandra, he shot a Tennessee police officer. The officer survived. He eventually recovered. He later stood in court and testified against Brown. Cassandra did not get that opportunity. She could not testify. She could not walk into a courtroom. She could not tell a jury what she had experienced. Her daughters had to speak for her. And this became one of the deepest wounds in the case. Because Brown was prosecuted for the officer shooting. He was convicted. He was sentenced. But Cassandra's murder remained unresolved in court. Her daughter questioned why so much attention had surrounded the officer's survival, while her mother's death remained without a trial. That question is painful, but it is also complicated. Different states, different jurisdictions, different cases, different legal procedures. The delay was not necessarily proof that officials did not care. But for Cassandra's daughters, procedure did not change the reality. Their mother was still gone, and they were still waiting. Remember where Cassandra worked. A courthouse. Every day, she helped process documents connected to other people's legal problems. And when her own life became dangerous, she filed her own paperwork. 25 pages. She documented what she said was happening. She asked for protection. And today, those pages remain part of the story. But Cassandra does not. That is the cruel irony. The paperwork survived. The woman who wrote it did not. The court records survived. The cell phone footage survived. The criminal case survived. The headlines survived. But Cassandra's voice was silenced, and her daughters were left carrying the part of the story that no court could resolve. It would be easy to remember Cassandra Jones only as the woman in that cell phone video. But that is the last thing she should be remembered for. Remember her before the shooting. Remember the girl from Vicksburg, the cheerleader, the runner, the woman who moved to New Orleans, the court employee, the mother, the grandmother. Remember that she worked, that she built something, that she had people waiting for her. And remember that when her relationship became dangerous, she tried to do something about it. She asked for protection. She put her experience on paper. She tried to create distance. And then on June 27th, 2022, she walked outside her apartment and never came home. There is no perfect ending to Cassandra's story, because real life does not always give families the ending they deserve. Sometimes there is a conviction, but for another crime. Sometimes there is a sentence, but it cannot bring the victim back. Sometimes there is evidence, but no trial. Sometimes the person accused of taking a life dies before a jury ever gets to hear the case. And sometimes three daughters are left with nothing but memories of the mother they should have had for many more years. Cassandra Jones deserved those years. She deserved birthdays. She deserved ordinary mornings. She deserved to walk into her workplace. She deserved to grow old. Her daughters deserved to watch her grow old. Instead, they were left with a question that no sentence can answer. What if someone had been able to protect her before June 27th? We will never know. But we can remember that Cassandra tried. She spoke. She documented. She asked for help. And when she could no longer speak for herself, her story remained in those 25 pages. So remember her name. Cassandra Jones. Not the video. Not the crime scene. Not the headline. The woman. The mother. The life. And the three daughters who still have to live with the ending she never got to choose. If Cassandra's story stayed with you, subscribe to Black Girl Lost, turn on notifications, and share this documentary. Not because Cassandra needs another headline, but because remembering her as a whole human being is one small way of refusing to let her life be reduced to the way it ended. Cassandra Jones deserved to be remembered for how she lived, not only for how she died.